All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the weekly recap. We got a lot to go over today in terms of a switch up in my plan, which I'll go over my diet break and explain, why I'm doing that and kind of how it works. But before that, we'll go over the whiteboard stuff and the numbers. So I did go to a friend's place this past weekend, and actually, just to clarify, we're doing this for the week that ended May 7th. So this is up until yesterday, May 7th. If you're watching, this is probably like May 14th or something. So just so you know, week before would be like last week. Last week right here would be like the week that ended of May 7th, which is a Tuesday, or Wednesday today. And so these numbers are for the average weigh-ins for last week. The average weight for the week before was 194.9. So the average we have here is actually 193.5. If I can make this 193.5. So another 1.5 down. And it actually probably would have stayed down a little bit more had it not been for this trip to my friend's place. I was at like a rib dinner with drinks and stuff like that with some old friends. I put the squiggly line here because I'm not sure how much it was. 35 seemed like a good estimate. It might have been a little bit more. Lots of salt, lots of stuff like that. So weight stayed up for a few. And the key, like this 500 day was making up for a high calorie day before that. If we were going to look at the way the calories that I ate here, it would have been closer to around a 1,600 calorie average. And had I kept that up, we could actually probably have seen a little bit of a lower number here. So, which kind of falls in line with what we'd expect based on my metabolism, eating 1,600 calories a day. Now, here I decided to come off. I'm going to go over the diet break after, but weight came off and this came back up. And part of the reason why it's stuck back up isn't because I gained back 2 or 3 pounds of fat, although I may have added a little bit here. It's possible, but the big thing to understand here is I'm going down, like basically when you go low in calories, glycogen depletes, you have less food weight in your stomach, you have less water weight, glycogen, like all this stuff goes down. So when you go low calories, you see a pretty quick dump of weight. Some of that is fat, but some of it's just other stuff as well. And you see this, like this is the same way someone on keto loses like 5 to 8 pounds in a week. A lot of it's just a dumping of water weight and glycogen, which comes back really fast if you raise calories. Like that should be expected when you go really low calorie or on keto or low carb, that when you raise calories, you'll see a pretty big jump back up. Now this might come down even though I've raised my calories a little bit, which I'm going to go over in a bit, but just explaining why the weight pops up and probably stays there a little bit, because I've actually refilled some glycogen and water and there's a little bit more food weight in my stomach compared to before. Doesn't mean I didn't lose fat over that period, but it's just kind of why you see the little bit of a jump and it stay there. I think that's all I'm going to go through today. But we'll get through. I put these squiggly lines. These squiggly lines on these days are important. These were both the travel days where I estimated some breakfast sandwiches at my friend's place, estimated. So whenever I make estimations, I always just like put some sort of note so that I know that it was an estimation. And usually it's pretty obvious because they're big round numbers. But either way, the reason I do that is because usually when we guess an estimate, we underestimate. So if I ever not sure why something happened, at least I know that these numbers just may be wrong. And these numbers are more like, okay, I knew them. So that's kind of why I do that. But otherwise, we're going to get into why I'm diet breaking and go through that, which is an annoying thing to talk about. And kind of like my impatience is probably going to show. But it's an important thing to talk about. And there's been a lot of questions. And it's a really important topic to touch on. So we'll go over it right now. All right, so diet break. Let's talk about this. If you've been on a weight loss period, you've probably not considered 2 things. You've not considered taking a break during the diet, and you've probably not considered the fact that the end goal is actually a lengthy diet break, which basically just means you're maintaining your weight. So I think there's a conversation to be had about like what a plateau actually is, and I think people need to frame this stuff differently. And I also think diet breaks demonstrate patience. I took an email from a client this morning at the end of it, and I just announced this yesterday on Tuesday, I think on May the 7th, that I was going to take a break from the diet. And one of my clients asked me, So what's the real, like she emails me, she's like, what's the real reason you're doing this? Like, and she thought it was because I was getting crapped on because of this 500 calorie day right here. Someone had a problem with that, which I explained, that isn't a huge issue. I'm not going to go over that today, but basically the reason why I'm doing it is because I just want to. And there's two reasons you could diet break. You could separate into psychological reason, just like you're kind of tired of dieting. Like it's because dieting and weight loss is fairly stressful. And there's also physiological reasons in terms of correcting a lower metabolism, which we can get into a little bit. And there is actually one study that really shows that there's probably going to be a benefit here. Psychologically, I've been dieting for 4 months. Regardless of how effectively you use the time, if you're in a mindset of trying to lose weight, I think that is inherently stressful. But also just weight loss in general is going to be stressful as well. So over the past 16 weeks, I lost about, we could safely say around 15 pounds. But for the last 16 weeks or a little bit more than that, I've been in a period of mentally tracking and letting myself, tracking, but also tracking to an extent restrictively, not very restrictively, but just as a function of diet, and you're tracking calories and you're tracking lower than your body needs to maintain its weight. So after a while, that kind of gets, like, if I want to lose more weight, I would rather just cut it for a few weeks or 4 weeks. And the reason why I've said that I might go 4 weeks for this isn't because I really want to or need to. It has more to the fact that in about 3 weeks, I go to Europe for a week. So the idea that I'm going to take a 1 or 2 week diet break, then go back to fat loss for a week or two before I go to Europe, and then I've got a bachelor party right before that Europe trip. So it's just like timing-wise of my life, taking like a 2 week diet break to go back into that and try and lose fat is just kind of doesn't make any sense. So chances are this is going to last closer to, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, and I'll resume when I get back from Europe, which is I think like June 1st. And then I'll take a good 3 or 4 month run at wherever I want to get to, down to about 180 pounds or something. Basically, in terms of the physiological benefits, we know that people lose metabolism and actually relatively quickly into a diet period due to a host of reasons. One of them being, as you weigh less, your metabolism is lower, just as a function of you weighing less. You have less body mass, like there's just less metabolic tissue on your body, whether it's fat or muscle. Also, you're carrying around a lighter body, so as a function of that, your metabolism is going down. We also know that there is some adaptation within the body that I'm not going to go into the depths of it, but basically, as you start losing weight, your body actually starts to defend in a variety of ways to keep you from continuing to lose weight. And we know that the longer in a lifespan someone's yo-yo dieted, the more they've probably created that situation where the body fights back. And that's just evolution. Based on the times we evolved from, our body knows that losing weight is not usually a good sign, evolutionarily speaking, because it just means we're starving. Like back in the day. Now it doesn't mean that, but our bodies evolved from that time. So that's basically what's going on. And I don't think my metabolism's in the tank by any means. For me, like I said before, I think it's mostly a psychological thing and mostly a timing thing. But there is a study that was published out of Australia about 2 years ago that has kind of like changed the way we see this. And when I was younger, I used to see this when I would like stop dieting for a bit and go back to it. It seemed like it sped up. And we know this diet, they call it the MATADOR study. It's out of Australia. It was about 2017, I think. In this study, they took people over 16 weeks. They took a group that dieted, and they did a lot of calculations over calories and maintenance metabolic rates. And they did this actually really, really well and very calculated. So they took a group and they dieted them for 16 weeks. And they had another group that would diet for 2 weeks and then stop dieting for 2 weeks and then diet again for 2 weeks and then stop for 2 weeks. And they did this over a longer period of time, into like 30 or 32 weeks, basically, just to match it. And what they found was the group with the diet breaks lost weight better in the periods that they were dieting. They also kept lean mass, they kept muscle better. And they also had higher rates of keeping the weight off afterwards. So 3 ways it kind of improved things. Now you're like, well, they took longer to do it. And that's the truth. And the other thing to point out is we don't know that there's any magic in 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. This is just one study that looked at something that showed improved rates of fat loss after diet breaks. So on top of the psychological benefit you might get from taking a break, we're seeing that you can actually replenish some stuff. And we're not sure, again, what timeframes are best, but we're seeing better fat loss after people take breaks from dieting. So whether this is a situation where you diet for 4 weeks and then take a week off, like there's a lot of different studies that can be done to show this. But what we're seeing is a diet break can be physiological beneficial for your fat loss, as long as you're willing to be patient. And the thing about patience is you're like, well, I don't want it to take that long. It's like you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of keeping the weight off. To demonstrate that you can keep the weight off while you're in a weight loss period is actually an important thing, I think, psychologically for people to go through, for demonstrating to themselves how much they can eat and keep the weight off, for them actually demonstrating that they can keep the weight off, just overall demonstrating the patience involved with making sure that not only you lose the weight, but keep it off. Because like I said before, people don't consider breaking during their diets. They just consider weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. And then they get to the weight loss. And honestly, the amount of people that I've talked to who I'm like, you probably haven't even considered the fact of what you're going to do when the weight is off. Most people don't even think about it. They just think weight off. And if you want to understand the numbers, most people don't have trouble losing weight. But 95% of people gain the weight back. So this is a whole new conversation about the way you view a plateau. Like a plateau is just a period where you didn't gain the weight back, which is positive. A diet break is a period where you forcefully kept the weight off and probably saw some physiological benefits on top of diet, and even if it's not 100% necessary, but also you just demonstrated to yourself that for a short trial period, you kept the weight off, which is an important vote of confidence for yourself to keep it off down the road. So it's almost like practicing keeping the weight off, even if not for a physiological benefit. And again, it's just a break from dieting. It's a break from all, like, I'm still tracking. My calories are going to go up to 23-ish hundred calories for the next week or two. And as long as my weight stabilizes, and it's totally possible that I drop weight at 2,300 calories a day if that's where I'm at, because it could still be a deficit for me. And if it is, I'm going to raise it up again and see where my maintenance is. The client I mentioned that asked me what the real reason I was diet breaking, in that email, she also said, because she had just lost 80 pounds in a year, we bumped her calories up from 1,500 to 1,600 a day, which basically took her all the way down from 230 to about 150. And we raised her calories up a little bit, and she had some pizza and her weight spiked, and she was like, well, if my weight's gonna stay up like that, we're not moving calories up again. I was like, it's not gonna happen. You're probably gonna lose weight again. All of a sudden, she went from 150 to 147. So she dropped some weight as she went up in calories, because even though we raised calories, she remained in a deficit, which we might see with me next week at 2,300. And if that's the case, I'll just bump it up again, which I imagine that my maintenance calories is somewhere in the upper 2,000. So we might see that happen as well, which is a good thing to show. But all in all, I just wanted to go over why I'm diet breaking. Timing was an issue. Again, there could be some physiological benefits. It's been 4 months. Like, it's just all around, I just don't see it as much of a big deal that I'm taking, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks off, pushing it down, and then we'll get serious for another 2, 3, 4 months after that and take myself to where I actually want to be. And the other thing is I also have a perspective right now that I don't have a problem. Like, I certainly don't have a big problem. I'm like 6'1", 195 pounds. I sit at a higher range of what's healthy for my size. Like, I don't walk out into the real world and like, oh, that guy's got a problem. It's like at some point that kind of plays into it as well, and that like I'm in a good spot. I'd rather just sit here for a bit and keep it going in a bit when time frees up for me. So that's why I'm doing this. Just wanted to update you, and if you have any questions, ask some questions, send me an email, do any of that stuff. And if you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button.